Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards. Welcome to InFocus, a weekly program where we zoom in on what's happening within and throughout the government, your government. As St. Kitts and Nevis transitions into a sustainable island state, regional and global observances such as World Water Day, World Food Day, and CARICOM Energy Month have taken on a different meaning. There's more awareness, more urgency, more action. The same holds true for World Environment Day, commemorated annually on June 5. It is a day that encourages action from individuals, communities, governments, in fact all of society, to come together and take positive steps to preserve and enhance the environment, making a positive difference in their surroundings, indeed the world. We continue to explore the government of St. Kitts and Nevis's multifaceted response to protect the environment and adapt to climate change. With us today is Sherverne Gardiner, Environmental Officer 2 in the Department of Environment, and Dr. Browne, Forestry Officer. We'll discuss efforts to promote land restoration, combat desertification, and touch on the upcoming National Conservation Environmental Bill. Stay with us as we delve into your government, your business. Thanks for staying with us. Allow me now to welcome Mr. Sherverne Gardiner and Dr. Browne to InFocus this week, gentlemen. Mr. Gardiner, you weren't originally scheduled to be here. Mr. Farrier was supposed to be here. Perhaps you can, just let us explain to the public why he's not able to be here.
Mr. Farrier, he's a very busy person, the director of planning, and there was a situation that needed his urgent attention, so I chose to fill in for him.
And you stepped up, absolutely, and that's very important. Okay, so gentlemen, we're here to discuss World Environment Day and some of the activities that the government is doing to preserve our environment here and, of course, to protect against the scourge of climate change, as we're all feeling it. It's extremely hot. We're all feeling it right now. So let's begin by asking first, how long has St. Kitts and Nevis observed World Environment Day?
Well, World Environment Day was initiated in 1973 by the UN, United Nations. At the time, there was 143 countries. St. Kitts, however, became a part of the UN when
St. Kitts and Nevis.
St. Kitts and Nevis, yes, the Federation. My apologies. In 1983, during their independence, and after that, in 1984, that is when they would have taken on the responsibilities of one of the participants or one of the partners of the UN in observing the World Environment Day.
Now, the thing about World Environment Day is that persons hear about it, but there are not too many persons who appreciate it. Why do you think it's necessary for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis to observe this type of recognition?
Firstly, awareness, public awareness. And over the years, one of the increasing issues that the world, the planet, has faced has been climate change, climatic issues, air pollution, plastic pollution, etc. World Environment Day was initially initiated to observe, to basically raise public awareness on these issues and how they may impact us and how we can mitigate or even prevent these issues from causing adverse effects on our lives.
Right. And Dr. Browne, of course, you worked in the forest. You're a forestry officer, as you established in the beginning. What does World Environment Day mean to you?
For us, when it comes to talk about forestry, World Environment Day is quite is a platform where we can raise issues pertaining to things that would affect the environment, particularly with the forest. Because you see, the forest is one of the single components that is critical in mitigating against the adverse effects of climate change. And so therefore, we are on the front line, and we want to raise awareness of how essential our forest is to us. Many persons look at the forest as just the bush, as they say, right? Many who don't even venture there. But we want to raise awareness of how critical it is, because we having issues like water shortage. And we want to let folks know that water shortage is linked actually to the forest, in that the forest is responsible for facilitating the rainfall. If you want to know how good something is or how important it is, remove it. So I like people to think at this point, what if we didn't have that forest? What would happen? So what my colleague, Mr. Gardiner, mentioned about the different pollution, you know, the air pollution, the forest is responsible for cleaning that pollution. You know, noise pollution is responsible for that. Giving us clean drinking water, it also play an essential role in that. So for us, World Environment Day is very important for us. It's an opportunity where we can jump up and shout out loud, we are here in terms of the forest, the forestry, and what we are all about.
Right, you don't have to necessarily wait for a tree to fall to hear it make a noise.
That's right.
Mr. Gardiner, talk to us a bit about how awareness activities would have evolved over the years now in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Initially, the awareness campaign would have not been for lack of a better word, full force at the inception of observing World Environment Day. First, there was the aspect of educating persons, knowing what this World Environment Day is, what are these impacts, what are these effects on our lives. And after that, there would have been the initial call to action. All right, so it was first about getting people aware, informing persons, and then there's a call for action. So over the years, we in St. Kitts, we may not have had a culture of observing World Environment Day. You might have seen it in specific sectors, maybe specific departments. However, as we walk around today in 2024, we are able to observe that the schools observing World Environmental Day, there are activities, actual practical activities where we have recycling, we have posters, information being disseminated, and basically an improvement in the education and actual effort in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, basically.
So essentially you're saying that that there's more activities, which is basically linked to the next question I was going to ask in terms of what evidence is there that it's having an impact. Is it really changing persons' behavior? Dr. Browne, you wanted to make an intervention.
Yes, when you talk about how the activities has changed, the activities for to observe World Environment Day have always been closely linked to the theme. And in the early stages, you find that these themes were dominated by specific countries. And you find that small island states like ours, at the initial stage, didn't have much of a voice, you know. So the big boys as such would dominate the scene. So many times back then, topics and so were not really, we didn't feel like we were included. Right? So there was not much attention paid. But what has happened over the years is that in terms of climate change, it is on a global scale. So therefore, it is affecting everybody, especially the small island states like ours. And so we have gotten more of a voice, or we have become more vocal. And so therefore, because of what's affecting us, we have ramped up our presence with respect to environmental issues. So you find that over the years now, we're finding in more recent times, you find the topics, the themes, is more about things that concerns us. And so our activities have increased, as my colleague was saying, has increased for us because they strike closer home to us. So we have been, in recent times, have been concentrating a lot on the environment, because when it comes to environment, everything affects us in every aspect of our lives. When the question you ask in terms of the evidence, we have seen, like I will go back, for example, for the theme from last year, focused on solutions to plastic pollution. And so we had a strong drive when it came to that from last year. And so what we have seen is that schools were engaged in the awareness campaign, and up to today, we go in any school and you'll find that they have their recycling program going strongly. We also went as far as the government got a project to deal with recycling plastic, especially plastic bottles, that we partner with the Taiwanese, collecting plastic bottles, baling them to ship them out. And we saw that one shipment has already gone from over Nevis, and we continue baling. And so you find communities, persons in the communities, the message reaches down to them. Okay, if you go to the points where they are collecting, and you will find that the persons are going there week after week and week, and sometimes I marvel myself to find where people getting all these plastic bottles from. We use a great deal. And so persons have gotten involved. And so we see that the message has gotten around when it comes to that. We also saw that it was necessary to get legislation in place. So we started working on legislation to the point where there is the plastic bill, and we have the plastic ban of single-use plastics. And that will come on stream in the 31st of December of this year, where we start with the T-shirt plastic bags, or what we would commonly call the shopping bags, the plastic shopping bags. And so you see there's evidence that the awareness that centered around World Food Day is actually working. And so that's why we continue. And that is why we are here today with you, Ian. So also to continue that awareness campaign with respect to these issues.
Now, you made an important point that I want to touch on, in the sense of the fact that some of the activities, the recognition earlier did not necessarily reflect the realities of small island developing states. But of course, the way to change that is for greater advocacy, right. And it can't just be an individual country. It has to be a group of bodies, everyone coming together to raise that voice. But it also means that there must be representation, right. Representation at international fora. Of course, we would have just seen the SIDS 4 conference in Antigua. We are aware that St. Kitts and Nevis, of course, has a very strong presence at the annual COP meetings, right. And it's headed by the Prime Minister. That speaks to the importance that these issues are gaining traction in.
You're correct, because, and you see with the different COPs, that deals with the different issues pertaining especially to small island states, you find that more and more the small islands are getting more and more vocal. And especially, I must point out this, especially small island states in our region. There are other small islands like in the Pacific and North Africa and those, but what I found out is that they are actually looking at us, as the example. So we are leading the charge actually. So our people must feel proud that our voices are now being heard. And our advocacy is not just for us, but for others around the world as well.
Mr. Gardiner, how do these activities that take place here align with St. Kitts and Nevis' goal of transitioning to a sustainable island state?
When we speak about sustainable island state, we're speaking about being able to live in our current state and for future living. So sustainability cannot, there is no place, let me say this, there is no place for sustainability for plastic pollution, for ill practices as it relates to environment consciousness. So, as Dr. Browne said, that certain of the activities such as recycling, the Taiwanese Technical Mission Recycling Program, are the SKNIS Solid Waste Management Recycling Project. It fits very well with our aim of reducing recycling and reusing. So programs such as the recycling program, the banning of plastics, single-use plastic, all these are commitment that the examples of commitment that the government and ourselves have made to basically ensure that the message of sustainability and our actions are harmonized in producing the required results that we seek, basically.
Now, for us also, specifically for us here for this month's celebration, our activities is right in line with this agenda of making the island, our country, a sustainable island state. In that, first and foremost, education of the masses. That is what we are leading off with, because information is the key, right? If we want to change mindsets, you want to effectuate change, you must educate persons. And so that is what we are leading off with. And that's what we are doing today. Now, some of our activities that we have for this month from the Department of Environment is that we want to reach all ages. So, children, they always tell you, if you want something to reach home to the parents, tell the children. And that has proven true. So, take for instance, this Friday, we are having what we call Forestry Day. The forestry unit will having something like a mini open day where we targeting the schools. And these schools gonna come in and we're gonna teach them what we do for in forestry, what we do. But specifically we talk about restoration, they will also have a chance, these children will also have a chance to do their part of restoration, because they're gonna be in the forest area and they will be planting some trees. You know, so they will also be actively contribute. We're not just hearing the word, but they would actively participate in that. And so that they too would understand of what it is all about. Break down that big word restoration and show them what is helping the forest.
Right, and we certainly will get a bit more into the activities a bit later on in our program. But before we move on, I just want to touch on getting the sense of from the gentleman here, because you mentioned that it's about education, it's about awareness. What are some of the greatest environmental challenges facing St. Kitts and Nevis currently? That
education, all right? As Mr. Browne said, educating the masses. A lot of the citizens are not aware of the impact that pollution ill practices towards environment can basically produce. A lot of persons are not aware that pollution, such as plastic pollution, can lead to health issues, etc. And one of the main issues, challenges, is change of habit and mentality. All right, we are a people that are slaves to our habits. And to introduce a new program, a new way of living, trying to change our culture and incorporate eco-friendly practices in our daily lives, that is an issue, because persons tend to look at the problem as an individual problem, how it's going to affect me when I have to change from plastic to basically eco-friendly alternatives. Another thing that is very challenging in the developing countries is the matter of funding. A lot of times we are not able to acquire the funding or produce the funding or provide the funding that we need to battle to speak to the environmental issues that we are facing. So the lack of capital, that is also an issue as it relates to the challenges within the country. And also being a small island, our voice. All right, being a small island, our voice, like Dr. Browne said, that we as a small island, our voice wasn't heard. So we had to say, hey persons, here we are. Hey world, here we are. We too are being we too feel the impact of climate change and these environmental challenges, and we too can and should be at the table as it relates to these situations.
What we see in terms of the challenges that we have stems mainly from human action. And specifically for us in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have, because of what is happening and the changes in our environment, we have challenges like which I categorize them as climatic. We have storms. We're in the hurricane season right now. So and that poses a lot of challenges to a person's livelihood.
Well, the frequency and the intensity, because of course we've always had a hurricane season.
Yes,
right.
And now with the higher temperature that we are experiencing, you know, we have prolonged drought periods, which is a challenge with water that we have there. And even when it rains, it actually pours. So we have heavy downpours, which could also lead to flooding and also erosion, landslides and those kind of things. Also even affecting agriculture. We know agriculture needs water. But when those heavy downpours, you could have loss of soil and persons cannot prepare the soil for planting. So the production is delayed. So these are challenges we look at with respect to the climate. We have air pollution. We see the Sahara dust coming in periodically. You know, we see other pollution, we see also the sargassum blooms that comes in even more frequently and heavier than before. Smoke, burning. We see people doing a lot of indiscriminate burning of stuff. People they like to light fires all over and at any time, even in the night when they're really not supposed to do.
But the intense heat also contributes to that as well. There are times when you see fires up in the hills. Certainly nobody is up there setting them alight.
Actually, I thought you were going to tell me the Southeast Peninsula, because that area is prone to ignitions. That is from heat and from the dryness and from sunlight hitting glass and those kind of things. But when it comes to the mountain, that is a bit more humid. Although you see the appears nobody is there, those are normally someone is behind those.
I'd like to show you my area and get your opinion on that.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that, and to see that if that is just combustion that just happened there. After, I would love to see that and to see what is the cause of that. Because if in the mountain, that's my interest. That's the forest, because I want to safeguard that area very much.
Okay, gentlemen, we're up against a break, so we're going to have to take a break and continue our discussion. And what we would want to get into next would be the theme for World Environment Day, which I can mention is land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. Some of that we've already touched on, but we'd want to further discussion there. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more In Focus. Welcome back to In Focus. We continue our discussion with Mr. Sherverne Gardiner from the Department of Environment, and also Dr. Eric Browne. He is from from the Forestry Unit. So, gentlemen, as we discussed earlier, we spoke about the theme for World Environment Day just before we took the break. And I'll mention it again. It's land restoration, desertification, and I'm not sure how many persons are aware of that word. I can tell you, I had to look it up. So that's certainly something that we'll be interested in discussing a bit more. And drought resilience. Let's talk a bit about land restoration as we break down the theme. What is land restoration? What does it entail? Because some person may feel it's like reclaiming the land on a Port Zanta. It certainly is not.
Land restoration is the process of halting the degradation of land and the rehabilitation of degraded land, basically. And this is done through several practices such as soil conservation and reforestation. This land restoration is directly linked to some of the climatic issues, the climatic problems we face in the country. Dr. Browne would have spoken about hurricanes. Dr. Browne would have spoken about when it rains, it pours, and human practices. These are some of the things that can directly lend to add to or cause the degradation of land as we know it. And land restoration don't just speak to processes such as soil conservation. It also speaks to land management. Because sometimes you may have, for instance, in St. Kitts, it is not expedient or wise for us to basically use the most fertile lands or soil on the island for activities for other purposes such as maybe residential or for say development. Alright, so land restoration is something that we are focusing on in St. Kitts, and there are several projects right now that is focused on that particular challenge as it relates to the climate.
So you're speaking specifically to sustainable land management. You
sustainable
don't use land that is great for growing food to put down a house on.
Exactly.
Right? Dr. Browne?
Well, when we think of land restoration, we must think and recognize that land sustains life on earth. Your house is on land. Your farm is on land. Your business is on land. Your playground is on land. And so we recognize that land has a social, economic, and ecological function. Now, because of man's action, a particular parcel of land tends to start losing this function. Soil loses its fertility because of overuse, overgrazing, even erosion and these things. And if it was a forest, man go and chop down the trees and everything. So it loses that ecological function of water retention and air conditioning. Land restoration speaks to activities that you do to bring back that land to its previous state or function. Many would think restoration means, okay, then it comes back, if it was a forest, you bring it back straight to a forest. Not necessarily that, because that may not be practical, right? Because of your state of development and your land management and everything. But it's to bring it back to a state. You want to create a balance. It's all about creating a balance between the human activity and the land itself. So land restoration is seeking to create that balance so that the land can continue to serve its viable purpose.
Is that a problem here in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Most definitely. Wherever you have human activity, degradation will always be an issue. Because man action many times is a destructive action. Many times you look at it as a necessary evil. You know, it's always there, the pressure. There's always a fight between development and conservation.
So give us some examples, some practical examples of individuals or harm that is being done maybe by companies, industries, or whatever that would affect, and very quickly, because of course we want to move on to the other area.
Now, take for instance, we mentioned agriculture. We want to produce food. We want to maximize the production. And in doing so, many times the practices that we implement may not be the best for the land. Take for instance, we prepare lands, and you see folks would go and they would harrow the land. Here in St. Kitts, we don't plow land. We harrow land. We say plow, but it's harrow, which is an action which actually leads to pulverizing the surface. So you're creating very fine particles. What this does, it is very good for you to work. With your hands, you can plant easily. But however, right after that, if rain falls, bits of these particles are easily washed away. And bit by bit, you are losing nutrients, you're losing soil. And so before you know it, in a number of years, what you think that you are on the arable portion of the land surface, you may end up start going down to subsoil, which is not suitable for. Restoration activity would involve now actually plowing instead of harrowing, instead of cutting up. But what plowing does is that it brings what is under to the top. So the nutrients that leaches down, you bring it back on the top. The organic matter, you put it under so it can break down and thus help with the structure of the soil, help with the water retention, and help it so that it would not be washed away so much. Restoration, right, here in St. Kitts is something that we need to focus more on. So we got to look at the practices. Yes, the farming is essential, is what we want to do. But many times it's not what we do, is how we do what we do. So you find here, when we look at the rest of it, land degradation is happening all over. Persons out there just chopping down trees, you know. Sometimes you wonder for what reason. And in some areas, in some slopes that you know, definitely they chop down the tree. If rain comes, it's a problem. We also talk about the heat that we are experiencing. But even in the villages, in the towns, people still want to chop down the trees because I want to see my neighbor 2 blocks down the road. Yeah. You know, and all of these things. You can prune a tree, but people are just chopping them down. And so therefore, it's reducing the capacity of the land to actually combat, you know, the effects of climate change.
Right. We move on to desertification. What is that?
Well, desertification is a process by which fertile soil becomes more desert-like. Fertile land loses its natural abundance, its natural tree life, its natural vegetation. This normally happens through the process of drought, as Mr. Browne explained, man activities, improper land management, agriculture, or development. And it is a situation that has been increasing over the years, and it's been increasing due to the increased impact of climate change. So that is St. Kitts being, you say 80% forest, being 80% forest, we must become aware of these type of situations such as desertification, and we must basically set ourselves to either manage or prevent this issue from becoming a problem in our federation.
Can you give us some examples like where this is evident, where we see this happening here in St. Kitts and Nevis? So persons who might not be aware, Dr. Browne, you could perhaps jump in as well too.
Desertification for us is not really looking at an area that is actually happening, but looking at activities that could lead to it. Desertification happens normally in those dry, arid areas. But why is it we here in a tropical region is looking at desertification? Because we are doing things that could lead to it. Desertification, basically, your land is becoming a desert. And that happens, as my colleague said, in drought conditions, prolonged drought conditions. Now, for us, the activities that leads to that is that when we remove the natural vegetation, chopping down trees, plowing land and leave it just so. And so you're losing your nutrients. So guess what? Your land cannot bounce back and give you back the vegetation cover that it once had. If this keeps going on and keeps going on and we continue having these high temperatures, We keep having prolonged drought periods. Areas that we know is normally green, we're going to just start to see patches of just dry areas. And you find that with the climatic changes that we're having, we don't want to reach to a stage where we cannot reverse it. We don't want to end up with an area like the Sahara Desert and those things. Persons may scoff at it and say, man, we in the Caribbean, that cannot happen. It can happen if we continue down the path that we are going, if we do not improve our agricultural practices, if we do not stop the wanton chopping down of trees and clearing land and leaving them like that, we're going to end up in these serious problems.
I recall a regional country, I won't necessarily call, well, maybe I should, it was on the news. It's in Trinidad, where, and I would have witnessed some of it myself actually in traveling through there, particularly at the airport, where you would have seen those typical images that we see in a desert in terms of just dry land and there are cracks in it. I actually saw that at Trinidad's airport. And so you're saying that is the stage where we need to get away from, because although it's not happening here, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure.
Correct.
All right. And so drought resilient, we spoke earlier about water shortage. It is obvious. Everyone is impacted by that.
Drought resilience refers to the ability of a community to withstand or bounce back from a drought, from drought conditions, right? How easy is it that we can recover from a drought, right? That is drought resilience. How easy we can do that? How quick can we do that? In order for that to happen, right, to have drought resilience, we have to put measures in place. And these measures in place include things like water conservation, education again, telling people use water wisely. Also conservation, get those measures, waste not, want not, you know. Also putting in those storage, like we have the new building code that is coming up that emphasizes that person.
Water storage tanks.
Right.
Yep, right.
So even that is a step that is important that we must have. Because if we have reduced rainfall, we need to make sure we capture as much as possible, right? So that when we have a drought condition, we can go through it because we have enough stored. And when we go through it, we can come out on the other side victorious because we also have water to continue it, right? It's just like a hurricane. You have to have water to have supplies to endure and conditions to endure, and also after to the period of recovery. So we also have early warning systems, right? We know we have those forecasts that tells us how the temperature is going to forecast to be and all of these kind of things. We also have to make sure that our infrastructure, and I could mention also there are projects that is geared towards that. For one, there is one that we call soil care that is coming on stream, that is spearheaded by the intergovernmental institution, that PISLM, that is going to introduce soil care. What soil care is going to do is that they're going to look at our labs, our soil labs and everything, see what they need so that they can be come up to international standards. Why your lab? When we're talking about this, one of the key things that we always falter on is not having enough data. And so therefore, this would enable us to collect soil data and enable us to see how soil fertility is changing over time, and so we can address that in time. This would help us to make informed decisions when it comes to soil fertility, when it comes to climate, land management and these kind of things. So we can be looking forward to that.
So you said there's soil care, what's the other?
Now, with soil care, the same organization is also going to be working with respect to drought. And part of their project is looking for what we in St. Kitts and Nevis put forward, is to finding water for farming, right? And so therefore we chose a specific area for a pilot, which is Keon, you know, the hotspot when it comes to water.
Yes.
Because if you have difficulty getting water for domestic use, you can imagine what's going to happen for agriculture. And so therefore is agriculture already made a step where they built some dams. And so this one is, what is proposed is that you get some closed storage to go along with the dams to store that water that the dams collect. And then you distribute to farmers. Agriculture distributed some black tanks. And so these tanks now will be connected to the huge one. And so the farmers would have that supply, that resource at their fingertips when it's necessary, when it's critical, when there's no rainfall, they would have this water for use. So when it comes to drought resilience, we are building out that. We are building out these aspects in terms of infrastructure. What about policy? We are also developing the policies to promote, drought resilience. Policy, like I mentioned, having your storage tanks. In agriculture, having your water catchment, your water harvesting, and these kind of things. And so, collaboration with the different agencies in government to ensure, because of course, it's not just water department, it's with agriculture, it's with sustainable development, and getting everyone on board when it comes to combating this phenomenon, which is drought.
And of course, the government also has as you mentioned in terms of agriculture, the drought resilience program, the DRIP program as they call it, which of course will help to provide water to farmers who need it, using methods that take advantage of conservation and really uses it in a sustainable way. And although you mentioned in terms of Keon being a hotspot, of course, we would have known that a new well was commissioned.
Yes.
But the important part of it is to be prepared.
Because
although a new well is discovered, wells won't last forever. We don't know how much water, how much rainfall is going to happen. And so it's important that we take the measures now to mitigate that. And that is the whole agenda behind Sustainable Island State.
You started asking me about forestry. And I would tell you this, which is why it's critical for that Central Forest Reserve National Park, which is the Central Mountain Range that we have on St. Kitts, and we have Nevis Peak in Nevis. Why is it so essential for us to maintain it as much as possible intact? In that person see it as land that could be developed, but at the same time, if we lose portions of that, or if we lose all of it, where are you going to get rainfall from? So therefore you could dig all the wells you want. All you're going to end up is holes in the ground. Because if that forest is not there, there will be no replenishing of the groundwater, which is what you're actually doing. So the forest facilitates that it goes in, a well facilitates you taking it back out. But if we do not maintain this vegetative cover that we have in the Federation, St. Kitts and Nevis, digging well ain't going to make a difference.
Very important point to remember. And what we'll do, we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we want to discuss more about the activities that the ministry has planned for World Environment Day and to help boost that education, boost that awareness, and boost, of course, behavioral change, because having the information really isn't necessarily just enough. There must be that behavioral change. So we'll have that discussion next. We'll be right back with more In Focus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Welcome back to In Focus. It's June 5 as we record this live, and it's World Environment Day. We're here discussing environmental issues with Mr. Sherverne Gardiner, who's an environmental officer with the Department of Environment, and Dr. Eric Browne, who is with the Forestry Unit. Now, gentlemen, activities, as we mentioned, to celebrate, it's very important to raise that awareness. Tell us what's happening this month. And we appreciate, as we mentioned, it's the 5th, so we don't necessarily need to go back, because I am aware that there was a church service. So let's look at the upcoming activities. I think mention was already made of an activity Dr. Browne mentioned on the 7th, which would be an open day. So tell us a bit more about that and other activities that's coming up.
For this Environment Day, the department decided that we are going to make it bigger. We are going to make it grander, and we're going to have an environment month of activities. Instead of focusing on one day, we're going to use the month and incorporate all of the activities we would have been pushing as it relates to environment conservation, and we're going to incorporate all that into a month and widen the public awareness on these events. So we'll have a month of activities today. This involves this particular interview panel is one of the activities we would have had planned for June the 5th. Also, we would have done some intra-ministerial collaboration where not only the government sectors, but public and private sectors would have urged, appealed to them to green their office for the day. So if anyone is traveling today and they would have gone to office and realized that it is green, that would have been as a result of the Green Your Office activities that we are engaged in. Also, we have the, well, actually I'm going to let Dr. Browne speak to the next event because it's more in his realm, his area, which is the Forestry opening day and treasure hunt.
Mm-hmm. So on Friday, happening this Friday, the 7th, we catering for the children. So we invited specific schools. There are 6 schools that's going to be participating in what we call the Forest Dash.
Primary schools or
primary
high schools?
Okay.
Okay.
We wanted the high schools, but because they're in exam mode, you know, so we going to have what we call the Forest Dash. It's a competition. It's a treasure hunt. And they will be dashing through, not dashing through the snow, but dashing through the forest and finding clues. And we're going to have the winners take all. And here we're going to have them competing for a prize, right? It's 3-man teams coming from the schools. Thank Education for coming on board with us and partnering with us to get this done. And the schools that we're going to be participating, we are waiting to see who they're going to be showing up to take advantage of this activity. We're going to thank also Latest Trends. We're going to thank also Smart Electronics, who have so far helped us in donating. We have 2 tablets there for those children. And we are waiting for some others to partner with us for the prices there for that. So we've seen that businesses also are on board, and we thank all of them for coming in. And that day, we're going to give the children a hike and show them aspects of what. And like I mentioned before, they will be planting. And we're going to also have them plant a papa tree, a papa plant, a seed in a bag. Mm-hmm. And this they will take back to the school. So they will take that back to the school and plant it in their school.
With soil from the forest?
With soil, yes. And so therefore, they will also not just leave everything there, but they're going back with it.
So it serves as a visual reminder?
Yes, of the experience that they will have, right? And already, we're going to also continue with these schools because we're going to go back in the next school term and we're going to go back with our forestry club. So we are using this to launch that. And to launch this, the children, we're going to look for, we have a mascot, mm-hmm. Captain SDG, Captain Sustainable Development Goals. And we have that mascot. He will be there to greet the children as well. And also, you know Captain Planet, you know about Captain Planet, right?
Yes, yes.
And he had his Planeteers, right? Because Captain Planet couldn't do it all himself. Captain SDG also needs some help. So guess what? These children who are going to be in the dash, we're going to dub them foresters. So it's going to be Captain SDG and the foresters. And that's happening on Friday.
Okay. We move on to some of our other activities taking place the week. I recognize that there's some involvement with the family, some entertainment added, that there is a family feud event that is planned for the 14th of June. On the 17th, there's a World to Combat Desertification and Drought. Professional development is also included. It's on the 18th. But I want to come down to the major event here in St. Kitts and Nevis, which is the St. Kitts Music Festival in June. There is an initiative where there is collaboration. Mr. Gardiner, talk to us a bit about what is dubbed Music Festival Screen.
Well, for this music festival, the minister was adamant that we must widen the span of public awareness. And
which minister are you referring to?
Dr. Joya Clark,
so
minister,
yes,
the Minister of Sustainable and Development.
Right.
She is very, very, very serious about the environment and moving towards sustainability. She would be someone that would say use the word sustainability over and over. So, as the music festival is a regional event and it's an international event where people are coming through, we want to actually show the world to incorporate all these visitors and show them that we are serious about sustainability, and this involves music festival going green. And what it means is that music festival will be making an effort towards eco-friendly practices, such as we are seeking to have eco-friendly alternatives to plastic cups. We are seeking to have recycle bins and reminders or posters, basically telling persons to be aware and to be mindful of the climatic challenges that we are facing. Also, I'm wondering if I should mention this, but there is also, there should also be a grand surprise as it relates to art installation at the music festival. So basically, music festival is going green. It's basically relating to everything at music festival. Once it relates to environment, we are trying to make sure that it is eco-friendly, and we're trying to make sure that persons who are visiting is aware that SKNIS is taking a stand to move to sustainability and to combat climate issues and changes.
SKNIS and Nevis, of course.
Yeah.
And it basically gives a glimpse into the future in terms of what SKNIS and Nevis would look like a bit more as the ban on single-use plastic comes into effect. Of course, you go to Antigua, you go to several other Caribbean countries for their festival, and you will find that there is no single-use plastic. And so it just puts SKNIS and Nevis in line with what is happening in the region, what is happening in the world.
Yeah, and that is something that persons are not aware of, and I think they should be aware of, that SKNIS, we are not normally the last in anything as it relates to the Caribbean or the region, but when it comes to plastic ban, we are the last OACS that will be engaging in the banning of single-use plastic, which we are not proud of, but we are happy that it's being implemented when it's being implemented.
The minister is very adamant that SKNIS and Nevis will not be too late to the party, that we will push forward.
Exactly.
Mr. Browne, let me come to you now. There is on the 27th also a Rangers restoration activity. Tell us briefly a bit about that.
Okay, before we get to that one, we will go back up to the 22nd with the extreme hike, because I want to thank some partners there when it comes to that. Because the extreme hike is from Old Road to Phillips's. It's a competition. We like to thank TDC and Island Purified Water for coming on board and partnering with us. This is to raise awareness of activities that happen in the forest. And hiking is one of the main ones. But this one is extreme.
Right, so it's at the Wingfield Military Trail.
It's the old military trail, we call it. It starts at Wingfield and ends at Phillips. And per se is a competition, right? And so therefore, this one here is highlighting what goes on in the fight. But this one is extreme. You got to run hard on a hard trail, right? Now, for the Rangers restoration activity, this is mainly for, there are those, when it comes to in government, those of us who are on the front line out there in the field, and there are those that are on the supporting end in the offices. So this is one for us here in the ministry, for us in the field to showcase what happens in the field, but not show them, where they will also be a part of it, so they could also be active witness of what goes on in the field. So this day they will go to one of our plots, restoration plots, and this will be done in collaboration with IUCN, an agency that is spearheading the restoration work through a project in different aspects. And one of them is active restoration of lands, where we'll be planting trees. And we got to go out in one of these plots on this day, and everybody will be planting trees on that day. So they would, all in the office, would get a hands-on experience also. So they too, that when we go to them for material, they would understand what is it we're talking about, and they could also spread the message of what restoration actually about.
And that gives them the practical hands-on. And that's very important if you're going to create change. Persons must have practical hands-on experiences that they can go back to and that they can continue on their own.
And also, Ian, is that we want to create a balance even within the ministry, that everybody is on the same page.
No, the single-use plastic ban, of course, is legislation that was implemented earlier this year, and there's also another robust piece of legislation coming up. It's called the National Conservation Environmental Bill. Mr. Gardiner, tell us a bit about that.
Well, the National Conservation Bill, it is basically a bill that will be replacing the NCEPA bill, the National Conservation Environment Protection Act, which stems from 1987. Now, this bill will be replacing that bill. It will be making some amendments and some upgrades to align with current climatic issues, and basically the bill is a bill that provides administration and allocate administrative responsibilities as it relates to environmental management, as it relates to conservation and sustainable use. And this is basically the bill that will guide, will be the guidance, the guideline for any activity as it relates to conservation, sustainability, and environment management going forward.
The NCEPA that he referred to, which was the bill that we're operating on right now, in comparison to the NCEMA, that bill is like a butter knife. And NCEMA is a samurai sword. Just to give you a little perspective. The previous bill was there, but then it was like having a dog with no teeth. Whereas the NCEMA now you're having a Rottweiler with all its teeth, and it's heavily alert. It covers more areas than the NCEPA in terms of environmental issues, and it also, the penalties are also steeper in that the fines are heavier, because we want the NCEPA bill, we want to be a deterrent, right, and not just something on paper. So we want to have an impact with it. We want it to be impacting with this NCEPA. So that is why we are pushing it, to get it out, to roll it out as quickly as possible. Right now, what we are doing, we are going through the legal reviews to make sure that it stands up to the scrutiny legally, right? The language and everything, content, everything is okay, so that we can roll this bill out, and hopefully for this year, we can have NCEMA rolled out, and we can quickly move to formulate the legislation, the regulations that goes along with it, that would give it its real impacting power. So right now, that's where we at when it comes to NCEMA. It is there and just going through the final reviews before we can actually send it up for discussion in Parliament.
Gentlemen, we have just about a minute left. I'll give you an opportunity. Dr. Browne, we'll start with you. Very quickly, any final comments?
Final comment is, let us conserve, protect our environment. Let us change our bad habits and cultivate the good habits so that we can have an environment that will enable life here in our Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Mr. Gardiner?
To add to what Mr. Browne just said, we appeal to the Federation to look at the fight against climatic issues, as a fight in solidarity. We want to make sure that everyone is on board. We want to make sure that everyone unite in this fight, and we also appeal to persons to not be so rigid as it relates to changes that will benefit the environment. We appeal to persons not to look at the changes that we are implementing as changes for disruption, but more so as changes so that we could have a sustainable future. And we appeal to the public also for their support in our environment month of events and activities. We ask persons to come out and support the activities that we are going to be having, and let's move into the future of sustainability in harmony and with effort, basically.
We leave it right there, Mr. Sherverne, Gardiner. Dr. Eric Browne, thank you so much for joining us for this edition of InFocus. And of course, if persons want to know a bit more about some of the activities that are taking place this month, they can find it on the Facebook page of the Department of Environment. We'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us for this edition of InFocus. We trust that you will join us next week at the same place, at the same time. For now, I'm Ian Richards.